Hey all and sundry, welcome to the channel. These days, we're going to ALK approximately. Who's Alive is the name of episode 3 of Severance season 2. And while those have been the phrases that have been at the UV light container, which contained the message that Mark become looking to ingrain into his insides, so he should examine it the instant that he awakened with inside the elevator. I experience it become additionally extra of a ethical query round the price of an inn's existence. And what? It is lifestyles become really well worth in particular, with Dylan and Mark, with Harmony Cable backing her very own price, and really well worth, however, taking a step, again, as soon as she had the possibility to talk with the board. The large query become, why properly? Let's discuss this week's episode of Severance Spot the Critical Info and smash down all that there has been to put off from it. Let's dive into Severance Season 2 Episode 3. This video will contain spoilers at the maximum latest episode. So I'm letting you recognize now, like with inside the preceding video, I'll be breaking it down via way of means of every and each man or woman that held significance. Harmony Cable, Harmony Cableist, certainly one of the extra exciting characters with inside the display, and we noticed at some stage in this episode that following her riding away in a healthy affrage with inside the remaining moments of episode 2 after being interrogated approximately. Gemma from Mark, she persevered in that trajectory of riding away due to feeling like Lumon not valued her. She become heading closer to Salt's Neck area that I've looked for, however, cannot appear to locate something approximately, or wherein, in truth, it even is what I found mainly exciting, approximately Harmonion. This episode become, whilst she become with inside the automobile, you can see that she so desperately did not need to depart. However, she felt, as a leavin', though she had had no other desire. Thinking about, she wasn't going to be with inside the role that she felt as a leavin', though she deserved and had labored her whole existence to be in a mindset and line that she truly expressed. All through her very last scene with inside the episode, I additionally experience, just like the considerable open landscape, represented how Harmony's thoughts become all through that second she committed her existence to Kia and Lumon. And now that she did not have the location that she labored her whole existence for, there has been not anything there she did not recognize wherein to move what to do, and there has been, in order that lots, area in her thoughts. There had been simply a number of close-ups of Harmony, even as she changed into in her vehicle, and the ones close-ups truly honed in on here. Yes, Harmony is pretty a chilly, emotionless individual, however, can transfer her feelings to whole rage with inside the flick of a transfer. So her eyes frequently do a number of the speak me on this example it regarded like she changed into at the cusp of crying for most of the power. This will be due to the fact she's misplaced her whole lifestyles, and he or she's upped and deserted all of it. But it were given a main consciousness, whilst she regarded down at what seemed to be a few form of breathing apparatus that you would normally assume to discover in a health facility. I marvel if she misplaced any individual alongside the grind of her becoming the pinnacle of the severed ground, even as devoting her time and life to worshipping Kier and Lumon. For this reason, why, whilst searching, at that it brought about her to consider and recognize the sacrifices that she made alongside the manner, so after reflecting on that she may also not have desired to basically run away due to the fact that individual that she misplaced may want to have ended up being misplaced in useless if she did. For this reason, why from that second on she modified her thoughts and drove to Lum headquarters to talk with Helena. Whilst she changed into talking with Helena there, has been honestly a electricity struggle that changed into there. Harmony changed into basically worrying that she'd be made head of the severed ground due to the fact she desired to oversee Cold Harbor, with it being at the cusp of having finished, which meant that Milch had to cross without being too direct. She, as compared the differences among herself and Helena, with the aid of announcing how she wasn't born into the placement, and that she needed to paintings for what she accomplished. It changed into one. She changed into going to meet with the board, wherein as she changed into on foot in the back of Helena. After she stated, "Why do not we reset? It would not need to be this manner," wherein she regarded over in shock, and he or she ended. Up on foot, and then using away? We did not discover why it changed into that. She regarded so pressured and involved, approximately what changed into at the horizon. However, Helena had that form of appearance in Heres too, which confirmed that she changed into also involved. I marvel if Miss Cable Clockton, at that second, that Helena had wider plans that she changed into wearing out, and he or she clocked that perhaps she wasn't allowing her returned onto the ground due to the fact it is able to be the May. Helena, that centering MDR, and not the any model, or it is able to virtually be due to the fact she feared for the protection of herself and became concerned that she might now no longer even pop out of Lum with inside the same country that she entered. We didn't have to invite you lower back. You did not have a choice. Are you certain approximately that I surprise if? The one's three strains of discussion is what's in the coronary heart of the instant of awareness that Harmony had. She thought that she needed to be sorted, or at least hung on to because of the records that she held. However, perhaps for the duration of the walk, she should have found out that perhaps they discovered a manner of casting off her. However, they selected now no longer to, or they might even be making her a topic in Cold Harbor. We have got visible Lumon foe deaths on the out of doors earlier than with the likes of Gimasso. Perhaps the worry of turning into a test difficulty became what stopped her from going beforehand. As I've stated earlier, then Harmony Cabellis, a risky asset of Lumon's, and I'm amazed they did not preserve her on the ground. She is aware of loads of records, and despite the fact that she's been a devoted worshipper of K and his methods, there's not anything to mention that the devotion that she has could not waver because of the manner that she's been dealt with. The arrogance and huis that she had is something that KIA stated most effective induced ache, but she became inclined to talk out and explicit that so the devotion should nicely be beginning to decrease because of the manner that she's been dealt with Dylan and Gretchen. I actually suppose the entire Dylan arc is set to get surely exciting, specifically now that he has met his spouse. Gretchen, the manner that the in-model of Dylan became talking together along with his spouse, became so gentle and prefer. There has been in detail of care there, regardless of the reality that they have been whole strangers, a manner which that appeared absolutely distinct to the times, that we visible the AE model of Dylan talking together along with his spouse. The AE model of Dylan instructed his spouse to prevent being nice once they have been at the Telecel smartphone, and he also not noted her Telecel smartphone name in episode 2. The AE model of Dylan defined the ATI model as a chunk of a screw-up because he in no way truly located his issue for a profession, and I assume there may be going to be a few form of divide in an effort to shape among the INI model and the ATI model, with the visitation middle being installation, and Gretchen searching like she should properly come lower back. I assume she might begin to choose the in model of her husband to the model that she's certainly married to at the out of doors. N.E. Dylan turned into intrigued to pay attention, approximately the youngsters, and turned into admiring an image of them, something which led her to grin at them. Plus, she gave him a hug and said that she cherished him. On the stop, whilst you examine that too afterward, with inside the episode, whilst she turned into leaving for paintings, because it is now emerge as clean that she does nighttime shifts. He wasn't making an effort on doing the cookies with the youngsters, and Gretchen did not certainly inform Dylan how excellent of a time it turned into that she had with gaining knowledge of the any model of him if this divide does shape. And Gretchen starts to perhaps have an affair with the any model, if you may even name it, that I assume in an effort to pose the question across the morality of the existence of a Nini, as opposed to an ATI, which one is more treasured, are they identical, and do they deserve the identical rights? I assume it will be an exciting avenue that has the capability to be explored, so I hope something like that does stop. Up taking place, clues continues to be pointing toward Helena being at the inner. There have been multiple moments on this episode that also made me assume that it turned into Helena. That turned into in MDR, and now no longer Helithos have been very diffused moments, and it turned into with inside the facial expressions that she gave off on activities the primary one turned into whilst Mark and her at a moment collectively once. They have been navigating the hallways and trying to hand out missing individual posters for Miss Casey, after they had a clumsy come across among each different, wherein Mark requested if she turned into okay to be supporting him because of it being his Al's spouse and them formerly being romantically engaged. Whilst he walked off, she had a chunk of a grin on her face, but a grin that turned into to herself now no longer. Each person else nearly as though to imply that she were given that feeling, that she witnessed her in have with Mark whilst she watched it on repeat, with inside the maximum recent episode. That feeling of hysteria, romance warm temperature, and a connection that she'd by no means simply skilled at the out of doors due to the fact she'd been without it. It really is the first little tale that I experienced there has been, and the second one turned into once they had been navigating down the slender move slowly area as they crawled toward Maman's nurture, be the second, wherein Helena had a inform turned into whilst Mark instructed her to keep away from the poop again, like what she had, whilst she smiled to herself. There has been only an actual human gaze and response that she had, nearly as if to mention that she could not. Except as true with that, she turned into their crawling through that area round poop, something that she ought to have by no means visible herself, doing due to the fact she would not have positioned herself in that role earlier than as she turned into, always simply in the back of her table. So even thought there were not moments that stood out as similar to in episode 1 with the switching on of the laptop I experienced. Those had been nonetheless small tales that had been hinting toward it being Helena Mark. Getting reintegrated a scene that turned into simply truly suitable to observe turned into every last scene, with inside the episode wherein we noticed Mark process the reintegration method with the aid of using Dr. Asel Rabi reintegrationists. A method, it really is taken into consideration, dangerous, wherein each the inside and out reminiscences and personalities fashioned collectively as one something that we noticed turned into successful with the method that Raghab carried out as each. Marks had been collectively as one and had been answering the query regardless of the truth that it turned into the AE model of Mark, that turned into being requested, each the strains at the display screen that represented the brainwave pastime. Were not in sync, however, because the method turned into going on they commenced syncing up. So I experience we ought tonically see a reintegrated Mark with inside the next episode of the display. Each the in model and ATI model of Mark have questions round Jama, and if she ought to nicely be alive with the special portions of facts that the each of them now have being in sync and reachable in its singular functioning mind, I do wonder if it'll assist the reason whilst Mark ends up returned in MD, or at some stage, in the following episode, we noticed that Mark and Helly ended up going into mammalian nurtural, so that you can hand out the poster of Miss Casey. Mammalian is basically every other phrase. For mammal and nurtural is self-explanatory in meaning to be nurtured, so this complete department looks as if it has been installation with the purpose of nurturing those mammals, which might be goats. However, with the ominous sound that turned into gambling with inside the background, once we first noticed them, there's certainly extra than meets the attention with why there had been such a lot of goats that had been there, and why they want to be carefully nurtured. We noticed goats being seamed after, with inside the first season of the display, and I experience like it's going to get extra of a recognition on this season too. I marvel if it ought to have some thing to do with Cold Harbor, if Cold Harbor is approximately moving minds, promising eternal lifestyles, or maybe cloning ought to. The goats had been basically used as lab rats in the beyond. However, rather than rats, they used goats. It would not wonder me, so maybe that might suggest that those goats don't have the sense of right and wrong of a traditional farm animal. They have got, truly, were given the thoughts of people that when existed human beings that might now be deceased. However, due to the fact it turned into an early level, they may have been placed internal of a goat I would not place. Did beyond Lumon, this can be why it felt like there has been such duty on the human beings that had been there, and additionally, why it turned into tucked away. Irving's paintings. Irving did not have the biggest of roles in this episode. However, I experience like there's something. It's nearly fatherly or grandfatherly, approximately the man or woman, in which, whilst he is on display, his tone and soft way affords in detail of comfort, and it simply seems like a delight. To watch the man or woman being performed, we notice that he turned into scared of going to Ode Optics and layout for the primary time. When you consider that Bert retired, however, as soon as he turned into down, there he noticed Felicia, and that they had been reminiscing over their time with Bert and the way they ignored him. Irving showed Felicia the drawings that he did of Bertha Weaver. Even as she turned into, in his EEE book, she stumbled. Throughout the drawing of the hallway that he drew, the very one that he recreated from what he remembered. From being in his ATI shape, this hallway turned into darkish. And it turned into as though the elevator on the quit of it turned into going downwards. Felicia diagnosed the hallway and door on the quit, and it turned into the exports. Hall reputedly, people used to move there due to the fact it's in which the shipments would pass. However, it turned into stated that there has been now a precise man that took care of it all. Exports are all to do with outgoings, promoting, buying and selling, distributing, perhaps even disposing, or sending to someplace that no one is aware of. So in itself, there's a lot of thriller round what might be at the cease of the hallway parrot with the truth that it become darkish too. I surprise if that is in which humans visit, be dealt with. Once both their time comes, or if they go align, the board recognizing Milch almost about Milch. In this episode, right here, had a focal point whilst it got here to the board speak me with him, and him being given the pics of Kia Egan cycle. However, as opposed to Kia being a white guy, he become alternatively a black guy. The board stated that this become executed, so Milch could apprehend himself of their founder Kiait become truly something that Milch notion become ludicrous, no matter saying that it becomes significant. Milik actually ended up protecting up the artwork and storing them at the pinnacle shelf, proper at the, again, of the garage room showing, that he did not take care of them. With inside the slightest eye surprise if in this moment Milch noticed simply how out of contact the board become, there has been already an element of frustration with Milik. Whilst we first noticed him with inside the episode, this become due to the balloons being left with inside the hallway and him being left to cope with them, then right now being spoken to via way of means of the board becomes something that he become thrown into. As nicely I do surprise how he feels approximately the connection among the board Lumon as an entire and himself one moment that made me experience so uncomfortable in this episode become as he become pretty much to open the field, the locked-on stare that Natalie had as she moved. Round Milch and the digital digicum motion, it becomes so excessive and it honestly constructed even more suspense on what become going to be inside of the field. I surprise if Milch's dating will begin to tarnish with the board, as he is basically simply turn out to be a puppet grasp for them. And at the same time as they assume they are respecting him, they are a ways out of contact with reality and will nicely be offending him. My overview of the episode, I notion this become a robust episode of the display. Do I assume it become as appropriate? Because the superior ropeisode too? No. However, it become nevertheless a outstanding piece of TV. This episode allowed the characters to branch off Abbott, and for his or her standard memories to begin to broaden with Mark and Helly investigating matters collectively, Dylan and Gretchen, and the ability friction that's going to be triggered there, Miss Cable strolling away. However, converting her mind, and additionally, Mark present process, their integration technique. I believe the subsequent episode goes to be in severe one, and I'm searching ahead to seeing what our integrated Mark may be like whilst it got here to the performances on this episode. I notion they have been all certainly Strongwindle and Christie became a Marvel Tosi, and he or she became a totally creepy individual. However, she slotted into the dynamic, certainly. Nicely her and all the different goat nurturers. There have been 3 scenes that certainly stood out to me on this week's episode, and it became the scene where Gretchen and Dylan have been collectively with inside the visitation room, the verbal exchange between Harmony and Helena, with inside the automobile park, and the reintegration scene with Mark, with inside the last moments. They have been simply performed so nicely, the manner that they have been felt so immersive. And I became certainly impressed with the stylistic method in that very last scene. It became simply seamless. You should sense the unique feelings from each of the Marks as they slowly became one, and I sense like this is such a surprising aspect. If you want to achieve at the same time as I touched at the goats, I do sense like they may be honestly going to have a large position to play with inside the display. I don't suppose this is the ultimate. We have got visible of mammalian nurture B. In the end, we did har that Miss Casey might do her periods in the husbandry tanks, something that does appear pretty strange, that is glaringly used for livestock animals. So I do query why a goat might doubtlessly want a consultation with a week to move till the subsequent episode. There may be masses extra to theorize over in the following couple of days till the episode gets launched. That is one in every of Apple's finest indicates, and it is persevering with to preserve the excellent, excessive, find it irresistible did in Season 1. Proper, now it is 3 and 3 for Season 2. What did you observed of this week's episode percentage, your mind with inside their marks? As continually, thank you for tuning into the video, and I'll see you with inside the subsequent one.